Hi guys, welcome back to Coffee with Megan, where I chat to people who I find truly inspiring, people who do things a little bit differently and live that go again attitude towards life. Sierra Quitiquit is my guest today, and I would say she 100% embodies that. She started her life as a professional skier. She was a ski racer. She transitioned into free skiing and then managed to combine that with modeling and her activism and love of the mountains. I think it's really cool how she's managed to combine all of these passions together and create a brand for herself. And I like to learn from her in this talk as to how she used social media to aid her with this, some of the tools that she's used along the way to get to where she is, her journey, and how she actually really had to work hard to create this for herself. It wasn't something that just came to her. She put in hours. She created different ideas for brands to really get to where she is now. And she hasn't always had it easy. She talks about some of the challenges she's faced and some of the tools she's used to keep her mental and physical health in check as she goes through a lot of these challenges. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. She's really raw and honest and just, yeah, she is such a cool person. And I hope you'll see this in this interview. So thank you, and let us know what you think.
Has been immensely passionate about skiing. Actually, it's like my Filipino side of the family. My grandfather immigrated. He ended up in the Navy in Alaska and fell in love with backcountry skiing, went on to become like a master ski racer. And my dad was a Europa World Cup ski racer, ended up in Utah. And I think he just was so passionate about the sport. He wanted to raise me and my three brothers with the passion. And so sometimes we lived in like a tiny little condo slopeside. Sometimes we would pile into a big van and just run around skiing and ski racing. And it was definitely like an alternative upbringing, but it gave me a really deep appreciation for the mountains, the outdoors, and kind of living a conventional life.
That's amazing. And were you homeschooled during that time?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we were homeschooled.
So interesting. And for people, so you then became, I guess, from this amazing upbringing, and I mean, someone who's from such a young age skiing, you actually turned that into a career and you became a professional ski racer. Could you explain to anyone who maybe doesn't even know what ski racing is? What does that look like? I actually don't know. Is it straight downhill skiing as fast as you can go? That might be really simple.
Yeah. So ski racing is the gates. So you're competing like through a set course. There's 4 events: slalom, giant slalom, super G, and downhill. The slalom's very tight. The downhill is very, very fast, very big turns. The super G and GS are in between. And I competed in that in ski racing when I was young, and then my folks were kind of like, this is all encompassing life and we can't really afford the sport. And so we left the sport, and then I started just free skiing. I was still super passionate about skiing. And when I turned 17, I started going like down to Chile to chase the winter season into the summer months. So I would spend like August and September in South America, just backpacking around, living out of my tent, skiing. And then I got into the Freeride World Tour, which is you take like one of the steepest, like gnarliest faces on the mountain. You have a start and an end, and you can go anywhere on the face, and you're competing for your score. And so I competed in that for a couple of years before I got picked up by sponsors. And then it was like a dream as a young woman to get to be flown around the world to ski, film and create media around skiing. And it's been I'm 33 now. I started skiing professionally in my early 20s, so it's been over 10 years. And it's been definitely like a really rich and rewarding career path.
Wow, what an amazing story. And when you before you did have sponsors and you were traveling the world backpacking, were you kind of working where you could to keep yourself going, like to fund your travels and skiing? That must have been hard at first.
Yeah, I was definitely a ski bum when I was younger. So I worked at a ski shop making like $9 an hour during the winter, but I got a ski pass and I got a discount on ski gear. And I just was so content to just live and breathe skiing. And then in the summers, I would work as like a cook on the line, also making $9 an hour and just saving up for my next ski adventure. And it's like the glory days of being like young and you don't care if you're sleeping in a car on somebody's couch. You just get to get up and go adventure, and every day is so exciting. A lot has changed since then, but it was definitely like really fun times, just like pouring into my passion.
I'm sure there's also along the way, there's like a huge community that help each other with that, because you probably meet a lot of people and they're like, hey, you can stay on my couch, or you can borrow these skis, or that kind of thing, to help you going with that. But when you got that first sponsorship, was that such an amazing moment for you?
Yeah, it really was super special. It was like at a time where I was like, I think I was 22, and I was like, okay, my friends are all graduating college and I've just been ski bumming, and I've gotten to like travel and, you know, climb a bunch of big peaks, but I don't feel accomplished. I should probably do something with my life. And I was at the Warren Miller big ski film premiere, world premiere in Salt Lake City, and I'd skateboarded down there and I was skateboarding around, and a friend who was a sponsored skier introduced me to the CEO of Spider, and I think he'd had a couple of beers and he grabbed my skateboard and went like took off with it, and he came back and it was cracked in half, and I was like, you know, like this is something that I'd saved for, you know, this is I didn't make him feel that. I was like, no worries, it's okay. And my friend used it as an opportunity to send him some ski clips of mine, and he mailed me a new skateboard a few weeks later. And then that was like right at the same time that I had gotten a global campaign with American Eagle for modeling. And so my face was like cut on billboards and magazines everywhere. And they were like, okay, this girl's got something going on. And they flew me into the headquarters for a meeting, and then they signed me for 4 years. And that was it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. I'm living my dream.
Goodness. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. And yeah, your modeling career is something I wanted to talk about, as to how you can see there, these two worlds of free skiing, and that, you know, the beauty of free skiing, and that you've got to kind of tell a story with that, and modeling, they actually really complemented each other in the end. And when did you start modeling? What age was that? And how did you start in kind of intertwining them together?
I started modeling when I was like pretty young, just like little jobs in Utah, nothing big. And then, but I never like saw myself as a model. I was such a tomboy. Come, I'm gonna come. Oh, little Layla.
Little Layla puppy has joined us, for anyone who's just listening on their headphones.
She's this is my little Chihuahua rescue. She's such a sweetheart. She always wants to be social, part of the action.
I love that.
But yeah, I never saw myself as a model. I was such a tomboy, and there was like a point in my life where I wore exclusively like a pair of brown cords and pink Crocs for like years. And it was my mom that was kind of always pushing me down that road, and she insisted that I try out for America's Next Top Model. And I kind of just, she was so insistent that one day I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I was such a fish out of water next to these like beautiful, well done girls that had these professional books of photos. And somehow I made it. I got a call from the producers and showed up in LA, and that was quite an interesting experience. Reality television is not what it seems. But I was chatting with a girl there, and she was telling that she had made $500 in a day on a photo shoot, and I at the time was making $9 an hour working as a cook, and that was just like, wow, what I could do with $500. And so I kind of like left the show. I didn't make it very far, and signed with a local agency in Portland and Salt Lake. And then like immediately after that, I got casted for a global campaign and was the face of American Eagle for 2 seasons, which was a big launch of my career, which pushed me to New York to get signed by some of the top agencies. And it was all just like very overwhelming at first. I have to be honest. I didn't understand like how to present and style myself and the whole game that modeling is. And I felt very out of place. So it was kind of like one foot in, one foot in skiing. And I had these two separate worlds where, you know, no one in modeling cared that I skied or knew anything about me. The ski industry was not quite sure if I was like a real professional athlete or I was just some modeling chick. But you know, it was felt good to me to be diversified and to have other opportunities. And then eventually social media came along, and I didn't like how I was being portrayed in the media in the ski industry, because these media outlets would just rip off a bunch of modeling images from the internet, and they wouldn't pay the ski photographers to buy the action shots. And so they would run all these stories about me that would have like 10 modeling pictures, often lingerie or swimsuit, and then one ski lifestyle. And I felt like I couldn't be respected as, you know, the athlete that I was and had poured my entire life into, while I was just being portrayed and objectified as a sex symbol. And then on the side of modeling, like, you know this, like, you're not in control of your image. When a client hires you, they want you to wear this, they want you to wear this kind of makeup, they want you to arch your back or portray yourself. And I was like, this isn't me, this is a character I'm playing. And like I said, social media came along and it gave me the opportunity to take ownership of my image and my story and be who I wanted to be. And that was a really great moment for my career where things really started to intersect.
Yeah. And that's one of the major positives about social media, where a lot of people talk about the negatives, but something for us, which is huge, where we are in an industry where our image, our persona is in someone else's control. Like, I go to work and I don't even like to look in the mirror half the time because I don't like the way they try to make me look, or like, this doesn't feel like me, but I'm just a different character when I'm at work. But something social media has given us, and you've utilized really amazingly, is forming your own brand and your own person and telling your own story. So I really love that you skiing, well, social media gave you that. And what's kind of one of the first things or a tip you could give to someone who wants to be sharing more of themselves? Were you creating creative, like, did you organize some ski shoots, so you could be putting that out there? Do you sometimes go and create the content yourself, or do you just collaborate with other movie makers and you go and make ski stories? Sometimes it takes a little bit of your own initiative as well to create those stories, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. Early on in my career, it was like, you know, me just getting put on location, whether it was by clients for modeling jobs or it was by my sponsors in collaboration with certain like film production companies. And less and less I enjoyed those experiences, because it would be like some middle-aged white man assigning me to a production on location somewhere, and I felt like they never really respected me or took care of me. And the experience was like often really hard. I was always the only girl amongst like 4 or 5 or 6 guys, all male filmers, all male producers, all male athletes. And it was like, you know, very one-sided. It was like, produce sick action shots. And I had an experience where I was like, what I viewed as like intentionally put in harm's way, and I almost died on production. And from like what I saw, the producer like may have even set it up to produce a dramatic action experience, and I was very, very lucky to survive it. Like, one of the male athletes that I was alongside that had been in the industry for decades said it was like one of the closest calls he's ever seen. I got avalanched over a 60-70 foot rock face, and there was one tree like growing out of the side of the rock face that I happened to like hit and grab onto. Otherwise I would have landed on like a pile of sharp rocks. And I was really traumatized from that experience. And the next day I actually lost my longtime ex-boyfriend in an avalanche. He was elsewhere in the world, and the insensitivity that I received from those producers and those men like really changed things from me and really put in perspective like how much I was endangering myself to sell product for other people, to put, you know, action segments together. And from there I was like, I still want to ski, I still want to produce amazing content, but I want to do it on my terms. And so that's when I started to really put on my producer hat, and I started to like build decks and say, I want to go here in this location, and I want to bring this female athlete and this female filmer and this female photographer, and do projects on my own accord and create media. And it turns out like I was able to do it, you know, at lower cost than these big production companies were charging my sponsors. And I think I was able to produce much better quality content that appealed not only to like the core of the ski industry, but also had a broader like emotional or visceral or beauty appeal. And that was really fun for me and allowed me to kind of like diversify my brand outside of just the ski industry and work into more like mainstream sort of companies.
That's amazing. I didn't know you were able to be start producing your own content. I mean, that's sort of really smart. And I mean, a lot of people don't take that initiative to start creating, like going to the brands and being like, hey, look, this is what I can do, showing the decks and taking that initiative. And I think a lot of them would love to, like you say, it saves costs and they're probably getting better production out of that. So that's really cool. That's really great advice for people to kind of take that initiative and go towards the brands with the ideas. And also, I'm sure through that, you've been able to tell more of your story within your activism world. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about how your time in the mountains has made you really want to talk more about sustainability and climate change. And what were you seeing that made you want to talk about that when you were in the mountains?
Yeah, you know, I found a business card of mine. I was moving recently, and it was for an organization I'd started when I was 17 years old, and it was this will give you an idea of the date of it. It was, the organization was called Skiers Against Global Warming, and our website was myspace.com/skiers against global warming.
Like 10 years ago or more.
Yeah, long, like 15 years
Yeah.
ago.
Wow.
So basically, like having been a skier, we spend, you know, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day out in the mountains all day, every day. And you get a really intimate feel for nature and the rhythms of nature. And when it starts snowing and how much it snows and when it stops snowing. And my experience from childhood was, you know, it started snowing in October, it snowed heavily, and then it started melting in April. And we had these major events lined up throughout the year. And sometimes we'd get on snow by Halloween. And then by Thanksgiving, my hometown was hosting the World Cup opening every year, which brought millions of dollars of revenue into my town. And, you know, then the season was so deep and there was so many powder days, and it was, as a professional early in my career, it was easy to film content. And then it just started to do this, and especially on this end, early season. And then suddenly we weren't able to host the World Cup anymore. And that event went away and went to Europe. And suddenly Christmas is rolling around and we have, you know, thousands and thousands of tourists showing up, but there's no snow. And the powder days are fewer and far between. And I was lucky and privileged enough to have budget and access to get it on a plane and fly to Japan or Canada or all these different places and find the snow. But what I felt was like a really urgent, you know, a challenge. And we were loosely hearing about global warming in school as this maybe situation, as maybe it was happening, maybe it wasn't, and the public at large was completely oblivious to it. But I was seeing and experiencing was an emergency that was without a doubt clearly happening. It wasn't just my experience, it was anybody that was intimate with snowpack around the world. And so that really led me to realize that, you know, there was a massive economic decline in the snow sports industry. And, you know, I kind of went from me thinking to we thinking of like, okay, my paycheck is suffering because the industry at large is suffering. In my youth, I just wanted to make a bunch of money and be on billboards and go places. But then my shift happened to, I want to save this experience that has given me purpose and joy and a livelihood. And I want my one day children and their children to be able to experience skiing. And if we keep going the way that we are, it's just not going to exist. And I was like, realize that we are at the forefront of climate change alongside, say, like Pacific Island nations that are losing their land to water rising. And so I realized that I had a duty to really start advocating and speaking out. And it's been a really enriching, like very beautiful journey that's given me a higher purpose.
Yeah. And you've even started your own organization. You're the co-founder of Plastic Free Fridays, as well as you've also started now Time for Better. Could you talk a little bit about Plastic Free Fridays and what your mission is with that?
Yeah. So like early on, I became obsessed with the toxicity of plastic and realizing that the oil and gas industry was just flooding our worlds and our ecosystems with this poison that never goes away, essentially. And when a few years ago, when the Nat Geo cover came out with the plastic bag on the front of it, I realized that the public perception was like finally in a place where they were ready to mobilize on plastic. So I wanted to create a space and an environment for people to become activists themselves and to lean into the change that they want to see in this world, because I think the climate space can be so scary and it can be so depressing and it can feel so hopeless. And in reality, we need massive systemic change on like a big corporate political level, but we also need the public's opinion and activation in order to encourage that big shift. And it's all circular. And so at Plastic Free Fridays, we challenge people to go one day per week, refusing single-use plastic. And what happens is really beautiful. You end up learning all of these skills and you see how many touch points you really have with plastic throughout your day. And then you're able to carry that knowledge, wisdom, tools, and skill set into the rest of your week and reduce your single-use plastic. And you become an activist by investing in things like Hunu, that are amazing organizations that are keeping, personally hundreds and hundreds of plastic lined cups, plastic lids from the landfill. And if you can scale that, if we can get like the whole world, or at least the whole Western global North, participating in refusal of plastic, we will cut off the stream because there will not be a demand for the product anymore.
100%. And I like how you're saying, that you started small. You didn't make people feel overwhelmed by saying, look, one day a week, let's try this, try and like be part of us. And I've become so aware of when you take in that knowledge and you start noticing, like through starting Hunu, I have noticed how much plastic I use and come in contact with on a daily basis, and it'll just trickle into other parts of your life. So I'm sure lots of people who have been involved in Plastic Free Fridays, then they'll continue that throughout every day of their week. And more it becomes, they find other solutions to avoiding plastic in their day to day. And to scale and start getting the word out about Plastic Free Fridays, where did you start? How did you start getting that message out there? Was it events? What advice would you give to people who maybe have a similar idea and don't really know how to get their message out there to start with?
We threw an initial launch event and just reached out to all of the people in our atmosphere in Los Angeles that we felt had influence and could spread the word. And there was so much excitement around it because I think people were like, yes, this is a huge problem and we want to do something that's actionable. And so we created a group of allies and we were able to kind of launch the initiative. And then we had so many amazing volunteer people that leaned in. Nick Bradenberger, the former Chief Global Brand Officer at eBay, came in to help us build the brand. We had an amazing branding team from London that came in and that built all of our creative, and we just had so many people that came and leaned in. They gave their time, their energy, and their talents for free to help us build this movement. And I think it was like a beautiful lesson that, you know, when you want to do something that's truly good for this world, you don't have to do it alone, and you can create community. And that's been the best part about it, is to find all these like-minded humans that like genuinely want to change the world for the better. And there's a lot of like passion and altruism there.
I can definitely agree to that. Just with our journey with Who Knew, is just seeing how many helping hands there are out there, especially when you are people ultimately, even if it's for just perception of the public, want to be seen to be doing good. So actually, a lot of people do want to help, or they do actually want to do good or spread a good message with their social media, but don't always know how to. So when you kind of give them a platform to be spreading that message, I feel like a lot of people come to the forefront and want to help, which is really beautiful. And you've managed to intertwine, as I was saying, being an athlete, and now with surfing too, which is really amazing. You've become an incredible surfer, and now you can work for brands that match up with your activism as well, and surfing and modeling, and you've kind of formed this amazing all-encompassing kind of, I love the image that you can work and you can be true to who yourself when you're working with brands. And that must be a really amazing feeling. Has that been a long journey to get to that point where you can really work for the brands you want to? And that must be a bit hard at first, trying to, you know, I find it hard. I'm not there yet. I'm definitely working for all different brands, but you really are in general working for brands that share your message. And that must have been quite a long journey to get there.
Yeah, you know, listen, there's so many compromises that we all have to make living in this capitalistic society where we have to make money. Like I'm still looking for my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but at the end of the day, like, you know, I have bills to pay. And so early on, I just, you know, as a young woman, I took anything that I could get. And as I started to build, it was really early in my career that I had a vision for myself, and I had a vision for the way the world was going to turn. I was like, people don't see it yet, but sustainability is going to be the largest, most important issue and topic of our time. And I want to be a voice for that. I don't want to be known as like the girl that hit rad cliffs skiing, or like the girl that shot great bikini images. I was like, those things are great, and there's an ego element into that, but what really feeds like the deep part of my soul and my purpose is being in the outdoors and speaking for the outdoors and being the voice that the outdoors can't have for herself. And so I made a ton of compromises early in my career. I remember like it was 7 or 8 years ago when a very large water bottle company, plastic single-use water bottle company, came to me, and they wanted to pay me a very, very handsome amount for almost nothing. They wanted me to come to an event and be photographed and post one picture on my social media. And it was more money than I had ever made in anything. And it was really, really tempting. I was at a place where my bank account was like not looking pretty, and I had a longer vision, and I thought like, how am I going to be an activist against single-use plastics and an activist that's respected if there's pictures of me all over the internet holding a plastic water bottle? And I dug into like my deep faith and deep belief that my vision would come into fruition. And I said no, and my agency dropped me after that. They were irate that I wouldn't bring this money into them. And that was a scary moment. I'd worked really hard to climb into like the top agencies, and I just knew in my gut that this wasn't a mistake. It was just a roadblock that was sending me in a bigger direction. And then I found an agent that totally believed in my vision and helped me nurture and cultivate that vision for the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be a question of mine. Is that you had to find the right people to work with, it's important to find the people who align with your beliefs, because I'm sure, like you say, a lot of agencies probably were like, yeah, she can do some online shoots for whatever, but didn't really see the combination of what you were trying to build for yourself. So finding the right manager, I'm sure, was hugely important for you and has aided to a lot of what you're doing.
Yes, but like to touch on that, like manager definitely, like support system one thing, but I also don't want to give an illusion to anybody listening out there that like you just believe and build a vision and things just happen. You know, I think when I look at my career, like I was never the best skier. I was definitely never the most beautiful girl in the casting line. Um, I was never the smartest girl. I was never the most talented in anything. But what I did have, and that no one could take away from me, is I was incredibly hardworking. And I viewed every opportunity as exactly that, an opportunity. And I brought my best and my A game. And even if I was working with a client that didn't necessarily align with all my values, like I still respected that they chose me and I was being paid. I showed up on time. I brought my very best. I brought kindness and gratitude, and I over delivered. And then I went home and I didn't just like go to bed or go to the nightclub. Like I was staying up late, building decks, you know, budgets for projects, presentations, and I would pitch 40 different companies, and that project would never go through. And then I would start over with a new project and this and that. And I think, you know, more and more I identify as a female entrepreneur above like just about anything. Like, and it takes that entrepreneur mindset to be a professional athlete. I think to be a successful model or woman in media, to run a nonprofit, it's like nobody's giving me this playbook. I don't have a manager that's like, okay, Sierra, get up at this hour, call this person, write this. It's just like figure it out, fail, get yourself up, and try again.
Yep. I would fully, that's a really great piece of advice, because it can sometimes sound like everything's out of your control and it just kind of happens, but it's not that way. And especially not for you. Something I wanted to touch on is you really live this go again attitude of kind of what we spread at Who Knew is just keep, you know, go again with reusing, or go again with your attitude towards life. And that is fully, like you're saying, you had to face a lot of setbacks. In modeling, you often face a lot of setbacks, I'm sure, in the sports world, but you've also faced huge injuries in your life. You're also dealing now with Lyme's disease, which is something that you're having to go for treatment for, which you've just found out. Well, have you found out more? It's been affecting you for a long time. And I wanted to ask if you wanted to speak about any of those topics with your injuries and with your Lyme's disease, and kind of what tools you're using for your mental and physical well-being to keep yourself on track through those hard times.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think like we live in a culture of highlight reels and putting our best foot out there. And I think it's really mentally unhealthy to, one, like project this perception of yourself that no one can live up to, and to constantly be viewing this perception of other people that doesn't include the full 360 experience of life, which is everything. And, you know, for whatever reasons, life, God, the universe has dealt me so much joy and richness and blessings in my life to live a beautiful, incredible life. But also I've been dealt so many challenges and difficult times, you know, from a young age. I lost my brother. I contracted Lyme when I was 15 years old. You know, I've gone on to have dozens of shoulder dislocations, pinched nerve in my neck. I had 3 shoulder surgeries over the last few years. As I mentioned earlier, I've lost people around me to the mountains, and I lost my mother early on. And these are all experiences and challenges that can either break us or make us. And in the process, they will break you to make you. And I can look back now, and even when I'm in the depths of the hardships now, I know deeply that these are all experiences that are giving me like a deeper well for compassion, a deeper well for caring, and giving me a perspective. Because if life is just easy and rich all the time, you eventually will hit a wall, and that wall is going to really hurt. And so I think that, you know, I wouldn't change a thing about the life that I've lived. You know, I will take all the greatness and sunrises on a mountain peak in the Swiss Alps, and, you know, shoulder surgeries. It all comes together of a life well worn and well lived.
Mm. And what are some of the tools that have helped you through some of those tough times? Is in your physical health, I know you work hard with a personal trainer, but even mentally, what are some tools that you find really help you through those tough moments, or just generally day to day?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. Like what I've learned is there's no arrival. Like there's no like, oh, I figured it all out. Now I'm totally happy all the time. But I think like the things that I've really leaned into early in my life was Buddhism, meditation, and yoga, and sitting back in a seat of consciousness and being able to watch the thinking intellectual mind and disassociate from thought and have a deeper connection to my spirit, and to find the rhythm of my spirit through my higher purpose. Like I know deeply that my purpose on earth is to help humanity to live in harmony with Mother Nature. I know that my life goal is to seek happiness and joy, and to spread happiness and joy. And so I have these north stars that I write them in my journal constantly. I'm constantly coming back to them, that I can be in the depths of hell personally, and I can know that this too shall pass, and my north star is set strong. And you know, relationships are so important, cultivating friendships that are supportive and bring joy. You know, I was in hospital recently for a couple of weeks for Lyme's disease, and I came out of it with some very, very terrible cognitive function that led to like some depression and anxiety. And I was able to kind of sit back and say, yes, I'm experiencing this, but this is not who I am. And this will pass. And here's what I can control, here's what I can't control, and find a bit of surrender. I will say it's not always easy. And I'll also mention that, you know, the day-to-day practices, they accumulate to create your whole lifestyle. And I'm very good at recognizing when I'm not in a good place, and I bring a discipline to doing the things that I don't necessarily want to do, but I know are going to get me to a better place. So like my morning practice, for example, includes a short 10-minute meditation, drinking like a lot of fresh water or a celery juice right in the morning, some form of like physical movement. And then one of my best tips is to gratitude journal, because that puts me in a mindset of no matter like what I could be going through, of I still have something in my life to hold on to that is such a blessing for me. And I think right now, like while the world is in such a difficult place and we're seeing so much war in Ukraine, you know, that's I do genuinely feel like so grateful, even though I am still ill, I'm still recovering, I'm not able to ski or do the things that I normally associate my happiness with. I still have a roof over my head. I still have hot food, and a lot of people can't say the same right now. So perspective and gratitude is really important.
Yeah. And I really agree with you saying it's all a journey. I kind of, with some of my anxiety and depression, I was definitely suffering with a lot during, kind of all hit me, because I think I'd been all go, go, go until COVID. And it was the first time I had sat still for so long. And it was strange because I had never thought, I knew I was a little bit anxious, but I had never really dealt with it at all. And it suddenly all hit me because I was sitting still, and it was like I was like, oh, I'm chilling. I have nothing really to worry about. Like you say, I'm so lucky, but geez, it was hitting me every day, like anxiety, depression, extremely. And learning those tools during that time has aided me now. Like you're saying, you can come back to those tools. So I really spent that time having to learn how to meditate, having to learn how to journal, having to learn, but I had never even done those things. And now I can, you can sense when those feelings are coming up and you can go back to those tools. So I would really say that's an amazing tip. And it's a journey, like still so many ups and downs. And the gratitude part of things, that's something I've really implemented. And yeah, as you say, right now, it's something every day I'm just like, it feels so unfair to be so in such a fortunate place, and some people really aren't. And so that gratefulness, I think, can really help ease some of the other things that go on in your brain day to day, to be like, hey, it could be much, much worse. I'm very, very lucky.
100%. I feel like what you just described, so many people in this world are experiencing. Like, we live in a society of distraction or escapism, of go, go, go. And when life suddenly shut down with COVID, so many of us suddenly didn't have those day-to-day, month-to-month distractions and we had to sit with ourselves for the first time in a very long time. And I do think that, our general society at large and our way of lifestyle and operation is not really conducive to great mental health, like Netflix binging or loads of hours on Instagram comparing ourselves to other people, late nights, alcohol consumption, all of these different things that Western society really drives, capitalism, like it doesn't really cultivate a deep knowing and deep happiness. So I think the blessing of COVID has been like a chance to step back and being like, okay, what is it really about?
Yeah, that's a lot of what I went through. And it's very interesting from a personal experience to know that things that you have gone through in your life just actually live inside your body. If you don't deal with it, it's going to be there at some point to show up on you. That was my experience. I had gone through something traumatic earlier on during modeling and all these different things, and kind of didn't hit me until I was sitting still and I was like, oh, I thought I was fine. I thought that wasn't a problem for me. And so our Western society definitely just gives you so many ways to avoid feeling. So it was a blessing for me in that way. And I think for people who are fortunate enough to go through that and find some tools. So with your meditation, do you follow a certain guided meditation? I always find this interesting to know. My boyfriend Vince, he just listens to like the sound of rain and has that as his practice. But I like guided meditations. Is there something that you more follow?
I can't say that I have an amazing meditation practice. I think the strength of my meditation practice is that like I do get it done. And it looks like so many different things for me. It may look like rolling over in the morning in my bed and like realizing I'm a little anxious on waking and hitting the calm, daily meditation and sitting there for 10 minutes where my mind kind of wanders in and out. And it could also look like me playing my crystal sound healing bowl and being fully present with that sound experience. It could also look like me being on a chairlift, like really looking around and smelling and seeing and noticing and being highly present. It could look like me skateboarding and being in the flow state and fully like immersed in my experience. Like all of those things are meditation, chopping vegetables, like fully in it. And so I think at this point, I just have an awareness of like when my mind is reeling and when my mind is calm and settling. And more, I try to just notice those moments where my mind is reeling, telling myself negative stories or going down the line, and just taking a moment of like, I'm going to take 5 breaths. Maybe I sit on my pillow. Maybe I go for a massage and decide like during that massage, I'm going to do my best to clear my mind. It can look like all these different things.
Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of advice to people as well. Just, don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't look like just sitting still, not moving for 20 minutes. And because it's not like that. Like I've been meditating for a long time now, and it's still half the time I'm in and out to be like, well, no, come back, stop thinking about your emails or what you're going to eat for breakfast or,
yeah,
it's
the chaos of the mind.
constant. I'm like, it's exhausting up there. But yeah, it's just implementing a little bit, and just like you say, bringing those tools back to your body and noticing what's around you when you're feeling that. It's just picking up the tools that can help you day to day. And on that, is there your life, I'm sure, can be a bit all over the place. Some days you might be skiing, some days you're modeling, some days you're forming a deck, some days you have a lot of emails, or some days you're dealing with just yourself and having to get through some of the illnesses, your lives, I'm sure also, your scheduling has to be kind of all over the place. Is there a tool you use? Do you schedule your days, or are you more free flowing with your time? Because I know for me, sometimes scheduling actually isn't that beneficial, because it actually makes me be a bit harder on myself. So I love to know people's advice on how they form when they don't have a normal 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And something that like I've struggled with and tried so many different things over the years. I everyone's different, and different things work for everybody else, I'll say that, but I'm inherently like very free flowing. My life has been largely spent following weather patterns, and so if it snows, I'm like, drop everything, like gotta go ski. And so scheduling has been very difficult for me over the years, and I've had to learn to really become a professional. And so I'm extremely fluid. Like what my daily or weekly schedule looks like changes all the time, because sometimes I'm on location in production, and there's no Zooms, there's no meetings, and you really can't even expect that I'm going to get back to you on email. And I've had to lean into like that being okay. And that's the lifestyle like I want to live for myself. And especially like my time in New York, people wig out if you're not emailing them back like within 3-4 hours. By end of day, there's a follow-up email the next day. And I'm like, you know what? I don't assign to those rules. Like, you want something from me, just because you want something from me, I'm not obligated in return. The rules change a little bit if I'm in like a client relationship with somebody I obviously can't blow them off and leave them hanging. But I've sort of come to master like creating a workflow that works for me. And often that includes like very short email responses. I might get paragraphs from a client or a partner or something, and I'm on the chairlift, and I'm like, okay, I have to choose between like, do I get back to this person maybe or maybe not today, because I still have to go home, go to my physical therapist, make myself dinner, like deliver on this or whatever, or do they get like a 1 or 2 sentence email phone reply that's like, thanks, sounds good, yeah, Wednesday 9 a.m, let's do it. And I've had to just like let that be okay. Sometimes like when I have a packed day of Zoom calls, I'm on the Peloton bike while I'm Zooming with somebody, and that's okay. That's what I need to make it work for my lifestyle. I will, however, mention that I am more on like the ADHD, creative, free flowing, distracted side of things, which has its benefits, but also, being an entrepreneur and being a professional, there needs to be a balance. And so I use Sunday evenings to map out my week, to say like, all right, it looks like, these are the days that I have calls. I try to stack my calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays and not take calls any other week, so I'm able to be in the mountains or have flexibility other days of the week. And then in the morning, as I'm writing my gratitude practice, my next step is to write my schedule, because I am so ADD that I can forget that I have calls or have things. And that's just a little check-in and visualization moment of like, this is how my day flows. This is where I have gaps if I want to go to yoga, or I want to go to lunch or do something. So I just recommend like anybody listening out there, like, you find what works for you. I have friends that are more on the OCD side of things than ADHD, and they live by like and die by their rigorous schedule. If that works for you, that works for you. Me, like, I need time to flow and be creative, so I make sure to keep my schedule that way. And I just trust that I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to get done what needs to get done, and what doesn't get done, maybe it doesn't need to get done.
I am going through all of that, like trying different things and learning along the way and learning what works for me. So I fully attest to that. And because I was trying to be, my biggest kind of, mentor that I'm learning from is Vince as an entrepreneur, and kind of transitioning from being a model who, I didn't really have anything I had to do each day, because I was a lot waiting on my schedule to be sent to me, and there wasn't so much. So I've never really for years had to schedule time for myself. I was very free to do what I wanted. And now I'm having to, be more disciplined, and I'm learning what works for me. And with Vince, he's very, very organized. He has everything. This is how his mind works. He puts things into blocks. And I was trying to do that. And then I was like, you know what? This isn't
Not
my
me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like that hour I was meant to do that, and I didn't do it for that hour. And then, so now I'm kind of similar to you. And what's working really well for me is each morning, as I'm writing, I'll write a list of the things that I need to get done, and I'll tick off that list throughout the day. And I'm a bit erratic with how I do things. Like when I'm tidying the house, I'll tidy there for a second, then I'll tidy that, and then I'll tidy, like, I'm a bit like that. And I'm a bit like that when I do things and speak as well. I'm a bit all over the place. So what works for me is having a list, and can start doing that. And it doesn't have to be in a certain time period, but as long as I get it done throughout the day,
Yeah.
works for me. So I guess, yeah, like, it's finding what works for your kind of personality is a very good
100%.
advice. Just to end off, I would love to ask some kind of like more rapid questions. The first one, I would like to know, what are 3 things, they can be objects or anything, that have made a drastic impact on your day-to-day in the waste you produce?
I would say carrying a reusable water bottle, carrying my Hunu reusable coffee tea cup, and always having like a bag at hand.
Yeah, huge things. Having traveled the world, what's one country that made a huge impact on your life?
Ooh, I have to say Senegal. Our trip to Senegal with the Mimran family and TO.org, which is an amazing organization that leads creative activists around the world to excel the world's most vital ventures. Like, they put on an incredible show in Senegal that connected us with like art, culture, local people, planting mangroves, the E-Extreme electric car race. That was just such a special experience.
I fully agree. Yeah, that's something that has, and just the way they got us to see so much of the culture there as well was, they did a really amazing trip and put together such a cool group of people, who I've really met. I mean, I got to meet you, so I'm very, very happy. What does living consciously look like to you, if you could put it into kind of a sentence?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think being aware.
Mm-hmm.
Just being aware of your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state, your surroundings, your environment, your relationships.
And lastly, do you have a motto you live by?
Yeah, I think it is what it is one that's been like really coming up for me right now, which just allows me to suffer less because it allows me to accept, what's going on with the world, with myself, and not fight against it, trying to change so much. That being said, I'll always be an internal activist trying to create social and environmental impact.
Yeah, and you're doing an incredible job. Thank you so much, Sierra. I had such an amazing time getting to know you more and chat to you. Could you tell everyone where they can, I'll put it everywhere, but where they can find you on social, and also your website is a really great place to learn more about you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm at Sierra, Sierra on Instagram. My website is my name, Sierra Quitiquit, and that's quitiquit.com. And then please follow us at Plastic Free Fridays on Instagram. We have a website also. And I want to invite anybody listening to join our community and do your best to refuse single-use plastics on Fridays.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It was so good to talk to you.
Thank you, Megan. Keep up all the great work. I'm so proud of you and everything you're doing with Hunu.
Thanks so much.